Hello everybody, how are you getting on? Today's little video is a follow-up to a video I did quite a few months ago in the summer called What's Going On in the Royal Family in April 2022. So I was kind of hinting at a certain thing, but I didn't want to too fine a point on it because it was rather rude to suggest. But I feel that now it's coming to the public domain that there is some question mark over the Queen's health, the monarch of the UK, etc. Because recently she's been cancelling events. She had to stay in hospital, which they tried to conceal from the press. She wasn't able to go to Northern Ireland on a trip. She didn't do the Remembrance Day celebrations, or commemorations, should I say, which is very unusual. She hasn't missed those in 22 years. I think the last event she did was she was hosting at Windsor all the Bill Gates, Schwartzman from BlackRock, Larry Fink from Blackstone, all the key douchebags in this whole thing. And since then she's been rather quiet, had a sprained back, so question marks are arising. So I thought that I would do a little prediction based on when I think it could possibly, the inevitable will take place. So next year, the 2nd of June, would be at the Jubilee. I've lost count of what it is. We had the Silver Jubilee, 77, when she was 25 years on the throne. 2002, it was the Gold Jubilee. Then it was the 60th anniversary in 2012, same year as the Olympics. There was the Diamond. So this year it would be the 70th anniversary of her being on the throne, which is what, like the Platinum Jubilee? I'm not sure. So will she make it, or will her demise be closer to April? So I'm just going to say, I used to be quite a fan of the royal family. I come from a family, my gran and my great aunts and whatever were the Queen was their hero, and they really followed royal events. And I used to kind of be on board with the whole it's good for tourism thing, a bit of pageantry. It's really good for the history of the country, like I say, for tourism, a bit of patriotism. A little bit of excitement, where's the harm? But now I've kind of woken up and I see they're part of this global power structure. They're part of the old money, which is a big part of the problem we are facing now in terms of the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset. They hobnob with all those people. I'm sorry, I can't stomach them telling me how to live my life when they are going about with their yachts, with their private planes, with their palaces. They are massive carbon abusers, and not that I really think carbon is the biggest problem anyway, but they're giant size hypocrites. And to be quite honest with you, if their brains were dynamite and you were sitting next to them, you're in no danger. These people should not be having a say in anything. They are unelected. They are not qualified to speak on any of these subjects, and they hang out with dubious company. I'm afraid they say you're judged by the company you keep. Well, I give you Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein, and Jimmy Savile. What more do I have to say? I would just like to mention that, they always do this date thing. So Prince Philip died on the 9th of April this year, 2021. And if you note there, he was 99 when he died. And there you've got the 9. And if you add 4 and 2 and 1, you get the 5. You get the another 9. So it's like 99. And if you look, the 9th of the 4th is the 99th day of the year. Okay, strangely enough, the Queen Mom died the 30th of March in 2002, and her funeral was on the 9th of the 4th. So there's just in recent history 2 major royal events happening around early April. So my guess for a date is the 5th of April next year, okay, because there's a lot going on in the charts of Charles, Andrew, Edward, the boys, William and Harry, and Princess Anne, all around that date. So it seems that's a possible date when something might happen. Plus, if you look, 5th of April, 5th of the 4th, 2022, it's the 95th day of the year, and the Queen will be 95. She passes then, so you've got that whole numerology thing going on. And if you add the 5 and the 4 and the 2 and the 2 and the 2, you get 96, and she was in her 96th year. She would have been 96 later in April, the 21st. So what we've got here is the UK chart, which I hope is coming up nicely on the screen. There you go. So I'm just looking at the UK chart. I've got various versions of it, just so for comparison purposes. Here it is on the 5th of April next year. Significantly, Uranus conjunct Mars in Taurus, the 8th house of death. Mars is in Taurus in the 8th house representing death, as I say. We're having a Saturn opposition Saturn intensified by the fact that Mars conjunct Saturn is opposite Saturn in the 11th house, and the 11th house is all to do with constitutional affairs. Importantly, please take note here, we have Jupiter, which is in the early degrees of Leo, and we have transiting Pluto in the late degrees of Capricorn, roughly opposing Jupiter in Leo. It'll probably be getting more exact when Charles is coronated, which could well be on the 2nd of June, because maybe instead of having the Jubilee on the 2nd of June, they can change that and make it Charles' coronation. So they still give the public their big celebrations and holidays and whatnot. Okay, so there you go. So those are that in terms of the transits. Now my next little picture here is in terms, these are really too big. I'll make it a little bit smaller so you can see them better. Okay, now this is the solar return chart for the UK for next year. By the way, it was UK chart we were looking at. And you see we have 3 major planets. We have Pluto, Mercury and Saturn all in the 8th house of death as well. And Saturn and Pluto obviously traditionally associated with death. This is a significant chart because when you do a solar return chart, if one of the angles, i.e. here, the ascendant, 9 degrees of Cancer, falls on a point or a planet, a luminary of the natal chart, it's very significant, and that falls directly on the descendant, because the descendant of, the midheaven, look, there you go. There you've got it. 9 degrees of Cancer, right? The midheaven, and here you've got in the solar return chart, it's 9 degrees of Cancer rising. The midheaven represents the ruler. So this does indicate a significant event connected to the ruler. Now the ruling house in this chart is the unlucky 6th house, and the ruling planet of the solar return, Moon, is conjunct Mars, which is again Mars being the ruler of the house of death in the natal chart. Very significant. And usually, Moon conjunct Mars in that house does signify certain things that might be not such happy events, should I say. Have a look here, Jupiter in the solar return right near the midheaven, indicating the coming of a new king. We'll just ignore this next chart, but look at this one. This is now the solar return chart. Very significant in the solar return chart. We have Pluto here, 7 degrees of Libra, squaring the sun and the descendant. The sun again representing the ruler, and the descendant representing the history of the country, which they're very much connected to. And big red flag here. Uranus, in terms of solar arc Uranus, is also conjunct Mars. And so that's like a double whammy, a double hit. That says to me something very significant, because our transiting Uranus is also conjunct Mars. So we've got transiting and solar arc Uranus in exactly the same point, conjuncting Mars, 8th house of death. And there you go. You've got your ascendant there too, bringing more focus onto Mars. Right, let's see. I think that's about it. There is no more hits on Saturn from what I can see there. I would now like to direct you, now we've looked at all those, to the 1952 chart. And this is for the 20th of February 1952, round about the time her father passed and she came to the throne. She came to the throne in June, but her father passed, I think it was late February. And again, look what we see there. Transiting, I think this is, solar arc. Solar arc, Pluto conjunct Jupiter. And what do we have now? We have transiting Pluto opposite Jupiter. So it's another theme, the theme of Pluto and Jupiter coming together. Jupiter very important, it's the 10th house of the ruler. Also we have solar arc Mars at the time of her father's death squaring the sun. So again we have a square to the sun from a major malefic planet. It was Pluto now, it's Mars there. And let's see if there are any other synergies. Saturn is not particularly active. This time, no activation of Mars particularly. So let's move on now to, it's back to the chart. Let's have a look at this is the solar arc directions now for 1936, the 10th of December, when the abdication took place, which brought the Queen's father to power. And what do we have? This is, like I say, it's the solar arc. And again, we have, let me just see what we've got here. Let's see. Hold on a second. So what we have is the link between Mars and Uranus, because here we have solar arc Mars ready to conjunct Uranus, Uranus being just in the early degrees of Libra. So again, we have the link between Mars and Uranus. We have Pluto acting in a significant way, this time conjunct the Moon. we have Uranus activating the whole Venus opposite Saturn, which we do have at the moment because we have transiting Uranus and transiting Saturn, acting on the Saturn in the house of constitutional affairs. So again, a couple of similarities, and Jupiter active because it's activating Mercury. I only say that is slightly important because Jupiter here in the 10th house is a significant indicator of a new leader. So again, we see this link between Mars and Uranus. We see Pluto is again in an important position. Of course, you've got Mercury on the cusp of the 8th house again, representing some sort, it wasn't a death in this case because it was an abdication rather than a death. And if we look here at the transits for 1936 as opposed to the solar arcs, what do we have? We have transiting Pluto conjunct Jupiter, which is exactly what we had in the solar arcs of 1952, and now we've got transiting Pluto opposite Jupiter. So in fact, transiting Pluto is exactly opposite the position it is in here. It's late Cancer and now it's late Capricorn. So definitely a synergy there. And then look, big wham, people, transiting Uranus conjunct Mars. And what have we got now? A double whammy of transiting Uranus conjunct Mars and solar arc Uranus conjuncting Mars in the 8th house, representing death. So big synergies there with the 1936 chart, when again there was a change in leadership. If you see here, well, I don't think we will spend too much time on transiting Mars because that's not a big whammy, and transiting Saturn not doing anything particular. So like I'm showing you there, if you look back at the chart in the past and you have a look at what the chart is signifying now, I think that if you're looking for a date when we might see a transition to Prince Charles and the end of the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, we can maybe start looking at the 5th of April. One more thing, another significant thing about that date is I think that's when they're going to launch the UK's digital currency, and they're going to use her death and all the stuff that'll be going on to be a huge smokescreen while that's quietly brought in. And more about that is coming up when I do the chart for the Nixon shock and talk about the global economic collapse, the movement to digital currencies. But I think there's something big going on with digital currencies being implemented, or the cashless society being implemented at exactly that time, early April, and this would present a wonderful kind of distraction. So, you know, the question mark is whether that'll be the actual day of her real death, or whether that'll simply be the timing of it for public consumption, which of course the two are very different things. Take care.